Well, it's important for me, and it's important, I think, for the people that come. It's important for me because when I'm sharing principles, I have to make sure I'm doing them. I'm looking after myself, and so I look at this as an opportunity as a check for myself when I'm asking other people to consider certain things. But I also believe it's important for people to get knowledge and more understanding about mental health issues. As I mentioned, there's wonderful websites now. There's specials on TV, on Oprah and 60 Minutes, and they are chock full of good information, which was not available when I started with my problem.
And when did you know that this wasn't just a little period of a dark cloud? This was lifelong?
Oh, I knew something wasn't right, of course. I didn't share the story tonight, but he did mention it in the introduction, Brent. I retired for 2 years and I made a comeback, and I couldn't really explain to myself, my doctors, or the Leafs why I retired. And after I was away for 2 years, started feeling a little better because I got away from the stress and so on. I made a comeback and played for 4 more years. And then after I finally retired, because the time finally came that old hockey players retire, I started this journey and got more knowledge, got more information, and then I could go back and say, that's what it was when I retired the first time. It was trying to get its whole hand on me at that time. But I was a little younger, and I was able to fight through it. But the next time after I retired in 1980 was around 1985, 86 when the bottom fell out. And I knew it was serious, but I wasn't asking for help.
So when did you realize, was it your family or who said to you, okay, you know what, this is wrong and you need help?
It was basically, I can see it as clear as I was looking in a mirror right now. I finally realized what I was doing to my family by not getting help. I didn't want to lose my family, and I had seen other things happen with families that are going through this. It's very difficult to support someone who's not trying. So I said, I don't want to lose my family. That's all. That's what's so important to me. And I said, that's it. Swallow your pride. Get some help.
And so the next step was?
Family doctor. Certainly my family doctor knew what was going on, but unless I was willing to go and have an appointment with him, he couldn't do much. So I finally went in and cried in front of him, and he said, okay, here's the meds, here's what you're going to be on, and that was the start. And he was very helpful for 6 months to a year, but he said, Ron, I really think because you've been fighting this for so long, you might really benefit from a hospital stay. And he was willing to refer me. And to go to a facility like Homewood, you have to have a referral from your family doctor. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful he did, because that's where I really turned it around.
Was it tough? I'm sorry, Kate, I just want to ask Ron a question too. In the macho hockey world, they talk about mental toughness and, the pressure that you played under in '72 right. And playing for the Leafs and working for Harold Ballard and all that kind of stuff. Did that weigh on you as well, besides the home pressures?
Well, sure. My doctors believe, so they really haven't come up with a cause of depression. They know it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, but they don't really know what causes it. My doctors and I've asked them, what do you think? And they said, well, number one, there's 3 things. Heredity. I didn't go into that tonight. But there's been depression in my family. Number 2 was stress, circumstances, life circumstances, and the stress of being a hockey player playing in Toronto can be stressful. Just ask Frank Mahovlich or Carl Brewer. And thirdly, I had 2 serious concussions in my career, and they really believe there's a connection between concussions and depression. Whether all 3 of those were partially to blame, I'm not too sure, and we'll never know maybe, but those are what my doctors think might have contributed to my situation.
And staying within the realm of, macho world and the world in general, to come out and speak, there's a huge stigma attached to mental illness. How did you get beyond that in order to talk with folks?
I definitely had to get beyond it. I think, I'll be 65 in January. I'm at a point in my life where I'm not too concerned what people think. If I can help others, I'm not too concerned. If I was 40, that might be different. But I'm at a stage in my life where I'm going to share and hopefully help people. And if there's a percentage that don't appreciate that, then I can live with it. But I must say, 99.9% of the time I share, it's very positive. People respond very well because they're searching, they're looking for answers, they're looking for information, and they're happy to see that it can happen to anyone. And I think that's part of my story is, if it can happen to me, if it can happen to Mike Wallace, if it can happen to Margaret Trudeau, it can happen to anyone.
Is it important for us, the community at large, to look at it, we used to whisper the word cancer, and now it's just part of life. Is it important for us to keep that message out there in order to remove that stigma?
I believe we all have a responsibility corporately. There's definitely responsibility at the corporate level. People who run the companies to be able to help their employees, and it has to come from the top. And that's another area I do a lot of work in. I speak to a lot of corporate people and employees, just to try and again explain what's happening. And unfortunately, a lot of corporations are beginning to pay attention, and that's wonderful. That's great news. But the main reason they're paying attention is they now know how it affects the bottom line. They took that, unfortunately, but at least they're reacting, and they're putting things in place to assist their employees with recovery and with back to work planning and scheduling, with good EAP programs where employees, that's the Employee Assistance Program, where people can go and confidentially talk to someone at work. These are all things that are fairly new, and so we are moving in the right direction.
And it's not a journey that's a lonely journey, and shouldn't be a lonely journey.
No. This is a journey you can't win alone. This is a journey you need support, you need people around you, you need people with knowledge of what you're dealing with. And you need people to understand that they're not responsible. A lot of family members have a lot of guilt, frustration, and anger. They're not responsible. It's the person who is ill that has to deal with it and has to do the work. So they just have to be there. Just have to be there and listen.
Kate, I got to ask him one hockey question. You pay attention. You say